Right now.
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 Because it's time to right now.
Right now.
Right.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
All right, and we are live. Welcome, my friends, to another Right Now Writers Group meeting. I'm your host, Kaufman, as we meet every Wednesday at this time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the dot to chat with other writers in the community and maybe just get some writing in, try to make some progress on our storytelling. So we would love to hear, what are you working on today? How's the progress coming so far this week? And what's the writing vibe? Drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Mama Maggie, always great to have you here in the stream, my friend. And ML, welcome. And I'll pass it over to my wonderful co-host, our engagement community director. All right, so.
Hey everyone, Chat Soul here. Tonight I'm working on another fan fiction and brainstorming my the cover for Bound by Song, which is so close to being done.
That is so exciting. My cover artist just sent me the finalized version of the Scarecrow cover, and I'm like, dang, it's
awesome.
So cool. I was just crying. It's like I'll probably look back on it in years and be like, it's garbage compared to what it could be. But I'm like so proud of it right now. I'm just so happy. No, actually, my cover artist put a lot of work into it. It's actually really cool. I'm never actually going to dislike it. Man. Welcome everyone. Maddie, Mary, WTC, great to see you. And by the way, speaking of like the Scarecrow stuff, WTC is helping me put together my author Scarecrow website, which I'll be launching soon. Now that the cover's done, I know the website's almost ready. I'll launch it soon. I realized I was going to launch all that stuff earlier, but I wanted to be farther in Scarecrow. I don't want to launch things too early, and I've just taken me much longer to get through this draft of Scarecrow than I anticipated. Oh man, how is everyone doing today? By the way, we will we'll chat it up, writers chat, whatever's on your mind, and then stick around and we'll get some we'll do some writing in just a bit. We'll see how much writing shenanigans and nonsense is on our minds today. So I was talking, we were talking before the stream, and we're like, it has been 52, we're on 53 meetings, yep. 53 writers group meetings. It's just crazy. We've kind of been through a lot. And I almost feel like when you join the writers group, I feel like that's kind of when you started becoming a little bit more active in the community.
Yeah, probably.
That's kind of like a precedent, because then that really preceded Adventure Right Now, the Write-a-thon.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, actually, technically, I think the Write-a-thon was the first Write-a-thon was around that same time. I can't remember if I did the Write-a-thon first or if I did the Started Writers Group first.
It was the Write-a-thon first, and then the Writers Group came I think a month or so later.
That's right, because the Write-a-thon was the first time you hopped on stream.
Yep.
I was like, I've never met anybody who's just like, yeah, I'll hop on stream with you for 6 hours and just.
Well, it's not like I had anything else to do. It was fun.
It was so cool. It was so cool. I just wasn't expecting it. So let's see, Write-a-thon, Writers Group, and then of course Adventure Right Now with our beloved Hermes the cat. Adventure, and that was quite a story. Oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever worked co-written a story as closely as we worked on that together.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
And I know we'll finish it at some point. We'll get to finishing it and launching it for the community once we're a little bit more farther with some of our other projects. I made a commitment to myself. I can't do anything else until Scarecrow's done. I'm at that point where Scarecrow is now going to be my priority for personal life, right now life, and everything else, because the events have been. And then we did the Right Now-a-thon, and then of course Faded Fantasy. So it's been quite a year.
It's been it honestly does not feel like a year. It feels like it's been much longer.
Oh man, and I feel like we've grown so much as writers in this past year. Real talk, just from everything I've learned from you, Soul, and then all the writers that we've continued meeting along the way.
Yep. I've definitely learned a lot from the community. My other writing group, they've made a few comments over the past few months now that
Mm-hmm.
the story, the Bound by Song, which I've been reading to them and getting
Mm-hmm.
feedback on, there is very little they actually have to correct me on compared to when I first joined them over a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they were correcting almost everything.
Oh man, that is that's so funny. That's so funny. And I think it just goes to show how far you've come. I think it goes to show how far you've grown as a writer as well. It really
I
does.
think one thing that helped is, well, my husband shaming me into finishing Pirates, and then it's like, you know what? I got in my drive for writing. I'm gonna keep doing
Mm-hmm.
this, and then hey, I find this writing community of all these people that are writers like myself. So I'm not just talking to people who like to read. I'm actually talking to people who do kind of the same thing I do,
Mm-hmm.
and I get to bounce ideas off. I get to see what they're doing. I get to see what they're working on, and then I get
Mm-hmm.
to be like, wait a minute, they're having the same issue that I had like 3 weeks ago, and here's how they fixed it. Oh, hey, I can fix it myself now, and it's just so it is just neat. It is just really neat.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like I, as well, have learned so much from writers in this community, and then the writers who come and go. Um, I'm just throwing up a Q&A question. What's one thing you've learned as a writer this past year? Sure, we've learned like multiple things, but I think one thing makes it easier. So I just threw that up as a Q&A. What's one thing you've learned as a writer this past year? We would love to hear from you. Drop a comment. And I know we saw a couple more of you guys hopping in. Always so great to see everyone. Let's see. Like Mama Maggie, like I re-uploaded my July 10th release with the proper back matter, and then my August 1st release because I forgot to put the recipes in the back. It sounds like you definitely got a lot going on, Mama Maggie. That's awesome that you're doing it. Your fish, like Chaos Migraine Gold, brain is real. Always such respect for what you're doing. Bethany, what's up? Welcome, welcome. Ink, welcome to the stream, my friend. Glad to have all y'all here. Tiara in the house. And Lynn, welcome, welcome. So when I think about like what are things that I've learned specifically from writers, I think I've learned just how important, not important, but I think I've learned how much I'm continuing to grow as a writer just by being a part of a community. I've been a
Mhm.
part of a lot of writers groups, but I really undervalued how much a writing community has helped push me to grow through the mindset, the skill set, and the lifestyle. And that's been such a huge factor. And I feel like I learn things from writers all the time that I didn't even think about.
The passive learning is so real. It really
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
I think for myself, I'm a lot better than I'm a lot better than I thought I am. Not that I thought like I was like super bad, but there's people that actually like my work.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I'm obviously doing something right, and I need to stop doubting myself so much.
Stop doubting ourselves. Have less self-doubt over our work. And I could totally see that, especially when we're trying new things and when we're hopping into different types of projects as well.
Yep.
I think it's really easy. I think it's really difficult when we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone.
But I gotta admit, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone can sometimes lead to the best things, because I did that with Echo After Silence, and now I have a novel that is very close to finishing, and it's like, this is literally my best work.
Yeah. That is so cool. And like I kind of thought I feel almost the same way with Scarecrow. Like I thought some of my best work was stuff that I had written previously, things that I was going to return back to. But then the farther and farther I get into this, like I feel like this is going to be like the best story that I've ever created. not
Once you
just
get hooked
Scarecrow,
into
but I think the
something,
universe.
it just tends to take off, doesn't it?
Hmm. Yeah. And it's like it really feels like it's taken on its own life, in both my mind and then in aspects of when I see others talk about it in the community, which is super cool. Whether it's Scarecrow or some of the other characters or just random like elements. And just cool. I think it's cool to see the stories that we write come to life. I can tell WTC like marketing is a real PETA.
Yes.
WTC, I'm sure you are not alone on that one. I think there are probably many, many writers who would completely agree with you that marketing is definitely not a highlight of their author journey. So trying to figure out right how to do all the marketing stuff for the author brand, I think it's part of the journey as well. And I mean, I think we're all figuring out as we go to varying extents, depending on how well what we've learned and what exactly we're trying to market. Right. So like I feel like I've learned a lot of like marketing strategies for like the Right Now brand and like trying to get like right now stuff out there and build awareness. And sometimes things work out well and then sometimes they fail tremendously. But I think that's also part of the journey.
Yep.
And then I also don't have a marketing background either. I'm definitely a creative background. So I think like a lot of creatives figuring out the marketing side of things
I think you're
is
either a creative or you're someone who's good at marketing, but you are never both. At
yeah.
least not naturally.
Yeah, not naturally. And I mean, I think you can teach yourself one or the other and definitely improve, but it takes time, right? Like any other skill set.
Yep.
Lynn, you're like, one thing that I don't need to be passionate about the story to still turn out good material. Though it helps. That's actually really interesting, Lynn. You know, something I've heard as a consistent um, thought, and I hear this actually from writers who've already published multiple books in their catalog before, of that they get to a point where sometimes writers will lose a certain level of passion for their stories once they've already published a few, and then trying to like, okay, well you can't not finish the series. You can't pull a
Yep.
George R. R. Martin unless you're George R. R. Martin. You got to finish. You got to finish your the stories that you start out to for the readership. It's almost
Yep.
like a promise, right? If you're starting a story, if you're starting a book of a series, you're making the promise that you're going to tell a completed series.
Yep.
Hmm. I could totally do that. I could
And
totally
you can
tell that.
always tell when the writer is passionate about their work, especially when they
Mhm.
continue a series, is it shows. It really does. I noticed that with Warriors, like for the first few arcs before before the women behind Aaron Hunter changed completely from like the first couple arcs. I
Mhm.
could tell that no, they were really enjoying the characters, they were really enjoying the storyline,
Mhm.
and not that the others weren't, but there was a different feel to it.
Mhm.
And then like through the Bloody Jack series, I could feel that he really enjoyed writing that. He really enjoyed writing Jackie. He really enjoyed
Mhm.
writing Jamie and all these other characters and all these events and stuff. It was it was visible in the book without actually saying anything.
How do you think it comes across for you? Like how can you tell if a writer's passionate? Do you think it's in like the word choice, the pacing, the structure, the
I
tonality?
think it's pacing, the word structure, the specific wording used, how well the characters are written, how well the plot lines up. Basically, the more work that goes into it,
Mm. So you think it's like a lot of
the
how
cooler it
well how
is.
cohesive a lot of the storytelling elements feel
Yes.
structurally. Interesting.
Basically, I'd look at it like a puzzle. The first book might be like, like 100-piece puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Second book is going to be like 500 pieces. It's still a puzzle, but there's more work done. And then the third book would be like 1,000 pieces, and keep increasing it with however many books there are till you get to the last one. Then it's like it's clear that it's still the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but there is just so much more work put into it.
So I don't know how many piece puzzle your first book is, but I feel like Scarecrow's 1,000-piece puzzle.
I think my first one's probably 1,000 too. Hey, remember, I took almost 20 years to get that done, so.
Oh man, Scarecrow is definitely 1,000-piece puzzle. I'm like, all right, there's 1,000 foreshadowing elements in there. Can you find all the pieces? Oh man. Let's see, what else do we got? Bethany, like, that's all my mental thoughts in my writing. It's all in my head and not the truth. Absolutely. Trying to translate like these things in our head into tangible stories that will actually connect with people. And of course, something we've learned from the community. If you're struggling with something, you just put a dragon on it. I think that's one of my biggest learnings from this year. And I can actually say that it worked because I put a dragon on Scarecrow and it worked. Hey, what's up, Neil? Glad to have you in the stream. Let's see, Mom Maggie. Like, I think the thing I'm most excited about for the second half of 2025 is that I finally get back to writing, because I've literally been exiting 24 books over the last 4 years with only writing 1 month per year. And you and me both. I think I just feel really excited to be able to continue on and make more of like a dedicated push with Scarecrow. I'm really feeling that as well, actually. Like, I feel a dedicated push with Scarecrow. Ink, you said consistency is a truly key. Ideas are cheap. Brandon Sanderson. But what makes a story good is the writer's ability to convey any idea.
It's
Yeah.
one thing to tell the idea, another
he said
thing
that
to
in one of his
craft
talks. He said that in one of his talks. So have you seen the Sanderson's newest talks? One of the really interesting stories he says is that any idea, whether it's good or bad, can be turned into a story with the right skill set. And I forgot what writer he was talking about, but he mentioned a story about a writer who had who wanted to prove that any idea could be turned into a book. So he basically took I think he like pulled from like a community or a bunch of people of like, okay, well, give me your hardest story and I'll turn into a story. And I think it was basically communism meets Pokemon. He turned it into a best-selling novel. And it's interesting. It's any story with the right execution.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I got to agree with this. Perfection is fine, but without passion, there's no perfection.
Mm-hmm. I could agree with that. Aw, Bethany, that's really sweet. Like, I feel that thanks to this community, I have grown a lot in many levels. So thank you for being a friend. Oh, that's really sweet, my friend. I really appreciate that. And I feel like me too, right? And I feel like I've grown so many online virtual writing friends from the community. Feels like it's like a home away from home. So there's like a level of like consistency.
Yep.
And inspiration I get. Like, I know even though I'm the one who started it, you guys are the ones who show up, right? Even if I did this 1,000 days, if no one showed up, it wouldn't do anything. But it's because all of you show up to the streams, whether you show up once a week, whether you show up once a month, whether you show up every day, whether you show up in Discord, the videos, so on and so forth. It's really meaningful to me. Let's see, Rachel, you're like, word of mouth. When it comes back around to you, it makes you feel so damn good. Completely agreed. And I see that with a lot of writers will say that once they publish their books, right? Once you've started talking about things, and then you hear like somebody else bought a book from just hearing about a book. I think there was a really interesting moment when we were working on Faded Fantasy, and I think this was with Holly and Lynn. And Lynn had been talking about, she's like, yeah, I went to my local library and I found your book there on the bookshelf in a completely different part of the world, in their local bookstore. They found Holly's book in their local bookstore in a completely different part of the US. And I'm like, dang, that's incredible. That's really cool, actually. Like, it's
I know
definitely
back in April when I had the convention,
Mhm.
somebody walked to my table because they heard about the gay pirate book, and I had not seen them walk past. People down the hallway were talking about my book, and it's just like, just awesome. Even though that was literally
Right.
local in just the same building, but still.
Dude, that's so cool. That is so cool. Did you like? We were like, all right, so this is the gay pirate book. Did you like
Yeah,
that?
no, like this guy just comes like running, almost like running over, and he's like super excited. He's like, "Oh my god, is this the gay pirate book?" And I'm like, "Yes."
So I want you to turn that into to a social media post. I want you to just like totally. I want you to just totally like film like a 60-second like vertical video and be like, "Hey, have you read the gay pirate book yet?" And I think you could actually put. I think you could get people to be intrigued by it by just calling it the gay pirate book.
You know, I probably could.
You
I
should, you,
probably
you should do
could.
that. Make it super informal. Be like film like right in front of your computer and then throw it up on socials. And then be like, hey, have you heard about the gay pirate book? You know, the one where so and so and so, like very brief blurb. You should try that. And like that
You
wasn't
know,
even
I might
coined by
actually
you.
try.
That
I've
was
been
coined by
thinking about
somebody else.
doing TikTok again. Actually trying to
Yep.
post some things on that, and
That'd work
that
for
might
TikTok.
actually make a difference.
That would totally work for a TikTok video. But I'm like, that's why like when people come up with really crazy or great ideas for stories, I'm like, use that because they're the readers are the ones who come up with the cool things. I mean,
Yep.
ah, man. Let's see, Cheryl, you're like, every time I start a series, I can't release the first book without completing the whole series. Hey, more power to you. I was like, I know I won't be able to finish the whole like I will definitely finish all of Scarecrow. I definitely will. Like I will finish it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've had a problem with finishing past works, but it's almost like I feel like I don't know if restart is the right way, but I just feel like I started a new journey of I don't feel like I started my writing career or author journey until this chapter of my life. Until like stream 1, day 1, maybe about a month before was when I feel like I legitimately started my author writing career. Even though I've been writing my entire life, I just felt that I spent the past 20 plus years practicing.
I can understand that. I didn't really feel that way either until Mason got me to work on Pirates, the last version of it.
Mhm.
I had been writing, I had been reading, I had been working on it, but until I actually sat down and focused on it, yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I felt like a writer, but then I actually felt like a writer at that point. So yeah, no, I get it. Maybe because you finally sat down and focused on it. Maybe
Mhm.
that's what made the difference. Is not that you were doing it, but that you were making it your priority.
I completely agree. And I think something I really want to call out here, by the way, Cheryl, you said I have 1000% passion and 10% skill. So I work very hard. And I just want to absolutely commend you because there are so many writers out there, Cheryl, who have such a high level of passion and they consider themselves to have a low level of skill. And they try to learn the things and realize that writing a book is difficult. The process of it is so they get burnt out. And I want to really commend you for just being able to show up for yourself. Like you'll reach your goal just by creating a consistent routine over a long period of time. So, and Chill, you probably don't give yourself enough credit. You probably have a little bit more than 10% skill. I feel like you do. A lot of writers, I feel like, undersell themselves in the skill. Like they might really suck at one type. Chill, I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying in general. A lot of writers might be like, hey, I feel like my prose is really bad because the characters don't make sense or so on and so forth, but they might be really good at another thing. Like they might be really great at descriptions, but they might really suck at dialogue.
Yeah.
But their story uses a lot of dialogue, so then they think they're a bad writer. There's usually a give or take. Most writers I've seen, even the writers who are newer, tend to be really good at one area of writing. And then the more time writers invest into building the skill of writing, generally the more things that they tend to have as strengths. But writers will always have weaknesses. I mean, I'm still overly descriptive in my writing. And that's always been a problem. But I've grown on it a lot. It used to be way worse. My writing definitely used to be way more overly descriptive. So I'll see how I feel about this when I try to get to the third draft. Try to knock out 20,000 words. Oh man, ML, you and me both. You're like, I guess that I need more dragons. We all need more dragons. Hey, welcome, paperback. Welcome back to the stream. Always glad to have you here. Yeah, like we need to find our strengths, make those shine, and learn other skills.
Gotta agree with that. Definitely gotta agree with that. When I
And
started rewriting fan fictions and I started focusing on action scenes, it's like, holy crap, I'm actually doing these really well. It wasn't just a fluke with pirates. I actually am just pretty good at action scenes in general. And then but because I was already good at that, but I needed to work like on, God, not emotional. Basically making it not passive.
Mhm.
No, I stopped. I mean, I still focused on the action, but then I'm like, you know what? I don't need to continue working on the action because it's already really good. People like this. People have said it is awesome.
Mhm.
But I get a lot of complaints from my other group about I write passively sometimes. So I found a strength, then I found a weakness and started working on the
Mhm.
weakness, and now I don't think they've made me change that in 4 weeks.
But I mean, I think that's a really good thing, right? So I think when we're I think what I see is I don't see enough writers are proactive about working on the one thing that they're the weakest at. I think sometimes writers know, but I think being proactive about weakness means that when you're working on your next story, you're being intentional. So if you really suck at dialogue, for instance, what are you doing to get better at dialogue? Are you learning some type of new dialogue technique a week? Are you learning new word choice? Are you listening to people's conversations and trying to improve at dialogue consistency? I think there's so many ways to go about it, but I think the more that you can be proactive about what it is that you're weak with writing will improve your storytelling in general. That's why a lot of times like authors will say, right, writing is rewriting, and the more you write, the more you get better. It's because you're also learning through trial and error. And by the way, welcome to the community, Auntie Caffeine Craft. By the way, we all love caffeine here. Love, love, love having new writers in the community. Would love to hear what type of writing you're working on. Welcome, welcome. Let's see. I completely agree. Like right now is such a fun community. I really have to get better about like screenshotting all the really cool comments after I've said this before, Sol, but there's been so many times where people have asked me about things I've said in previous streams, or they're like, "Yeah, you remember when you said that one thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, from like 223 streams ago." No, I don't. I'm sorry. I really apologize, guys. As of today, I mean, we've streamed now. I've streamed now consecutively 545 days. Um, of those 545 days, I probably remember like in depth, like the level of detail, probably maybe like 50 to 100 of them, right? And those tend to be the specialties. Like I remember the podcast, I remember the critique streams, I
Yeah.
remember the events, obviously. Like obviously I remember the specialty ones, but a lot of the writing sprint streams, we have so many cool conversations and so many community members and so many come in and come out. We need a comment. You know, Mama Maggie, you're actually not the first one to say that. You're not the first one to say that. It's funny. I think someone said they needed like a book of a quote of Commons books. If one of you guys want to start something on the Discord, we can do that. I just think that's hilarious. I don't think I say really good things. I just say stream of conscious and what's on my mind, and hopefully it resonates. Like it resonates with me. I'm the one who's saying it.
No, I think it resonates with the rest of us too. I mean, we're all writers, so we all got, the same semi brain process.
Uh, no agrees. I love that. Rachel, like it's definitely been muse inspiring to be a part of the community. That is so cool to hear. Really, really appreciate that. Let's see, on to caffeine. Like it's always so exciting when a total stranger buys your book,
Yes.
right? So you talked about that a lot, right? When you first launched your book and you were at those events.
Yeah, the last event this past April,
Mm-hmm.
I had 3 people buy my book, and it's just like, oh my god, somebody actually bought my book. Even better, one of the people was actually at the con last year and remembered me. they remembered my book and they had wanted to get it, but they couldn't find a physical copy. So I was there and they're like, hey, I want to buy this. And it's like, yes.
You're like, woo, success. That's actually really cool. Hopefully I'll feel that same way whenever Scarecrow launches. I think it's just the idea, right, that we've spent so much time, we've invested so much time, energy, resource into creating something that started up here, right?
We're
And
basically putting a piece of ourselves out into the universe.
Mhm.
And it's not that different from a musician when they create a song that means a lot to them. It's the same thing. It's a type of storytelling. And when our books go out there, that's a piece of us that is going out there, and it's just like, this is us for the world.
And people tend to generally show trust with their wallet. So if somebody a lot of people, because with the way social media is, it's easy to say, I like that, this is great, it sounds awesome, I'll do this or I'll do that. But when somebody spends money, which they've probably worked hard to earn, it shows a level of trust. So when somebody buys our book, who we don't know, they're not a friend, they're not a family member, they're just somebody who was interested in it, whether it's because we talked to them about it or they saw it somewhere or word of mouth, I think it's like a validation of all that time, energy, and resources we put into creating the thing that was non-existent before we started.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I could totally say that. I think that's actually a really beautiful part about being an author. That's one of the reasons I love writing. That we can create a story that is entirely fictitious, whether regardless of what genre it is. We can put together all the elements, craft it, define it, and then create that story and tell it to other people and hopefully inspire, move them, not move them, whatever your goal is. I think that's definitely really something to be commended.
I will say my fan fictions recently have actually been getting comments.
Oh, really?
One person actually commented, I think, on every chapter of Raised of the Pirates,
Mm-hmm.
and they loved it. They weren't
Really?
too sure about Kobe being a pirate, but they love the way I wrote Shanks. They love the way I wrote Luffy. They loved how I wrote Buggy being competent. And it's like, this person actually went out of their way, basically, to say how much they loved this. And then one of my most recent ones, somebody actually commented on there, like, this is such an underrated character. We need more stories of him. Please continue this. It's like, not only did they comment, they're like, we want you to continue. And it's like, yeah, it's fan fiction. It's not quite the same as publishing a book that, we can sell in a store, but it
Mm-hmm.
still has that same, people are reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not just giving you kudos saying, oh, this is good. They like it enough. They're actually telling the writer that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just,
And
there is like no better feeling.
I can tell that with what ML said. ML said, I was honored when a reader told me that they cried while reading the part in one of my novellas where a character died. That's really powerful, by the way. I think if you can create enough of an emotional connection that gets somebody to cry while reading your book, like that's powerful. That is really
That is a
powerful. It's
sign of
difficult to
a
make
great
somebody.
writer.
Yes, completely agreed. It's difficult. It's difficult enough to build an emotional connection with someone through words on a page, but being able to get them invested in your characters, like, that's really sweet, ML.
Also, I just want to say this, fan fictions cannot be sold. There are a few exceptions out there where you actually work with a company. I think some of the Disney books might actually be considered fan fictions, but they are actually written by people through Disney, so they're not really fan fictions per se. But you could almost consider them that. But a true fan fiction, no, you can't sell it. The best I've ever actually seen any fan fiction do was the original author commented on a fan fiction that somebody had written from their work. I wish I could remember what fandom it was from. It wasn't something I got into personally. God, maybe it might have been something with no, not Marvel. It was some kind of superhero thing. But the original author actually commented on it, and they loved how the writer had actually portrayed that. But you can't sell them, unfortunately. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I know, Soul, you would know since you're much more familiar with fan fiction than I am. Thank you for sharing that. And then also, so everyone knows, we also have a place on our Discord. So anyone who's not part of the Right Now Discord, it's linked down in the YouTube description. But anyone who's not part of the Right Now Discord, there's actually a fan fiction channel on there that we created. So there's a place for you to talk about fan fiction. There's also a place for you to post your own fan fiction.
Yep, the fan fiction thread that I started is actually where I would like people to post links to their AO3s, their Wattapads, their fanfiction.net, wherever they post their fan fictions.
Mm-hmm.
I have a thread specifically for that so that people can share their works and we can read whatever we're doing. And I've also been thinking of maybe hosting, not like all the time, but an occasional fan fiction meet and greet sort of thing where we can actually like talk to each other about not just writing but working with characters that exist and actually trying to help each other figure out, how do I write this character that already exists when maybe I'm not familiar with them? Because I've been doing that a lot with my own fan fictions. I will admit one of my favorite characters to work with is Ben Beckman. We do not really know much about him within the series, but I've worked with him so much in my fan fictions that I have a very good idea of how to write from him, even though we know very little. And I've written from so many other perspectives by this point, including one that I actually hate, that I think it actually might be useful for some people to come and talk sometime about trying to help each other figure out, hey, here's a character I don't like. Here's a character I'm not familiar with. I can't change if I don't want to change them from the canon. How can I do this?
It totally makes sense. And fan fiction is definitely its own universe when trying to tell a really good story. I think what's powerful about fan fiction is that the rules for the universe are already in place. It's almost like fan fiction is an exercise in character development.
It is. It really
because
is.
the general world building rules have already been set. So then you're really focused on plotting. You can either take the pre-existing plot that is canon, or you can create a new plot, which would be non-canon in your story, and then mix that with whatever type of character development.
You know, I'll actually use my own for example, since I've written so many of them. And okay, so my AO3 account has 17 different works posted. I actually have a little over 20 that I have overall. I just haven't posted some of them because there's really not enough to do. There's really not enough to put up there, and I'd like to finish the ones that are already posted. But the world building is already set, and I have researched so much about One Piece, it's insane. I mean, people could ask me anything about One Piece and I could probably answer it. But I don't work with the world building outside of making my own locations. I design my own ships sometimes depending on the character. But like the plot, for instance, I actually do a mixture of, I work with canon and I work with non-canon. I do have my alternate universe, or alternate timeline, which is Luffy was raised by Shanks for 6 years, which did not happen in the canon, but it still more or less follows the canon events. And then I have a couple others that are in the works, like From Beast to Human, which that took canon characters and the reader, a non-canon character, and it added in a timeline that did not exist within canon, but still adhered to it. It was like an alternate parallel universe sort of thing. But it's really a challenge in figuring out how to work with plot, figuring out how to work with characters that cannot be changed, whether they're your own or not. And so like for instance, since I work with Beckman a lot, I can't change him. I don't like changing characters from canon. So I have to figure out, he's already kind of set, so I have to work with that. Then I can take that to like Pirates, and it's like, okay, in the first book, these characters did not. I hardly knew anything about them, even though I designed them.
Mhm.
But I still could not change them because I knew what they were supposed to be like overall, and I had to work within my own parameters.
Mhm.
Even though they were my own characters, I still had to work within them. And the fan fiction has actually helped me practice that a lot because I'm trying to keep them as true to themselves as possible while knowing as little as possible.
Mhm. I think, Cheryl, you brought up actually a really great conversation with your fan fiction questions, and I could see that they were talking about it in the chat. Like, what if the fan fiction is an old movie that never went anywhere back in the 1990s? Can I take over as the writer and create spin-offs from it? And then I saw WTC and Lynn were both speaking to copyright law and awareness. So I think the difference is, because now we're kind of getting into the adaptation realm. Um, Really, fan fiction is, we're going to talk about, that is a pre-existing work that we are not going to be making a profit or revenue off of. That we are acknowledging that it's part of a pre-existing universe, and we'll be posting it online, acknowledging that it's part of a pre-existing world. Like if I wrote a Star Wars fan fiction, acknowledging, right, the Star Wars is owned by Disney, so on and so forth. That tends to be where fan fiction resides. Adaptation, and they were talking about copyright law. So when you take a pre-existing work and you rewrite it and you create your own, if you are trying to make money off of it, like if you're trying to turn it into a script, turn it into a novel, and if you're not giving the correct uh, the correct enumeration, or not saying who is the owner of the work, that could could go against copyright law. Now, if you're just doing that for free and you want to give it out to free for people, that generally shouldn't be an issue. The issue is if you're trying to create something that you want to make money off of it. And this is where copyright law comes into play, and adaptations. As we all know from Hollywood, 60% of what we see produced, movies, television shows, has already been done because it's existing IP, and it's an existing franchise. There's a reason we see remakes of all the movies, right? We see the Harry Potter remakes coming out. We see the Chronicles of Narnia remakes coming out. We see all these different things are remade every 5 to 15 years because there's a pre-existing IP and a franchise for it.
Yep.
Now, let's say that you really like a story from 100 years ago, right? It came out 100 years ago. You're like, hey, I could redo this story better. I know Lynn and WTC both spoke to public domain. There is a specific amount of time that passes once until something becomes public domain. I think it's like 50 or 100 years.
It's 50, 75, or 100 years, and I think it actually
It's
depends on both what the original copyright was and
Mhm.
also the type of media that it is. I know
And
that for books, it is generally 50 to 75 years.
this is the reason that I want to say about 5 years ago, we started seeing the horror movies made out of some of the Disney characters. We
Like
saw the
Winnie
Winnie
the
the Pooh
Pooh.
horror movie. We see the Mickey Mouse horror movie, the Bambi horror movie, because those original Disney classic elements. The original Mickey Mouse was Steamboat Willie. The original Winnie the Pooh, and those things that I think were 50 years, might have been 75 for them, but they became public domain. Now, not the entire franchise, and I'll give you guys the perfect example for Winnie the Pooh. So Winnie the Pooh, where it was at when it was created originally, however many years ago that was, became public domain about 5 or so years ago. Not the entire Winnie the Pooh, the Winnie the Pooh that existed at that original point in time when it was created, a yellow bear who loves honey. All of the other elements that were layered on over the years, like Winnie the Pooh with like the red T-shirt, and Winnie the Pooh with his friends with Piglet and with Christopher Robin, those were all characters and elements that were added in the years. Actually, Christopher Robin might have been part of the original, but a lot of those were elements that were added in the years following. So all of those are still protected by copyright law.
Yep.
The only thing that was not protected was basically a bear who loves honey. So you saw these horror movies, which basically there was the Winnie the Pooh horror movie, which the only thing that it resembled was basically a bear that loves honey. That was like the only thing that resembled of the original. They couldn't use the trademark red. They couldn't use the trademark characters. Otherwise, it would have been copyright infringement. And as we all know, you don't want to go in a copyright infringement case against a company like Disney. You will lose.
Yep.
You will definitively lose.
The only company worse
definitely
than Disney would be if you go against Nintendo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Nintendo, you will definitely lose. Never try to go in a copyright infringement.
Oh, please! If you go in against Nintendo, you're basically like 12 feet under.
Yeah, because Nintendo like hates their community. Nintendo legitimately hates their fan base. Never try to create a Mario or Zelda or any Nintendo.
Hey, look what happened with Power World.
I know.
Nintendo went after them because of Pokemon, and but they actually lost though.
Did they lose? Did Power World end up losing that?
No, actually, no. Power World won.
I think
because it was different enough that it was not considered plagiarism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting thing, but once again, like Hollywood does remakes and adaptations all the time because they get these really old works and then they buy the license. They will purchase the license from the owner. So it's like if there's something that didn't work out, Cheryl, and you're like, hey, I want to rewrite it. Maybe I could do it better. Reach out to whoever the owner was. It doesn't always have to be like, oh, I have to purchase the thing from you. It could be a creative who tried to write something and it didn't work. Be like, hey, I'm really inspired by this thing. I would love to remake it. Or I'd love to work with you to remake it. I think that's another strategy as well. You might get a creative who'd be like, hey, you know what? I thought nobody liked it. I thought it was dead in the water. And maybe you could come up with a new partnership. Or you might come across someone who's like, yeah, I would be willing to sell the license to you to use the work. So, yeah, definitely interesting. And I'm definitely no expert on copyright law at all. I've done my share of research. I always recommend before making any decisions, any creative decisions, you should do your research, consult the right people.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not legal advice.
Basically, you research until your brain feels like it's going to explode.
Awesome. And I can definitely tell a number of us in the community have some familiarity with copyright and public domain stuff as well. Yeah, and WGC bring up an interesting point. Also, whether or not the original owner or owner's family does not maintain the copyright. So this is so if you're going to try to use something, you have to go through the rabbit hole of figuring out who actually owns the copyright. And I think like Lord of the Rings, the copyright is still owned by I think it's still owned by Tolkien's family.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure it's still owned by Tolkien's family. So the reason that they're able to keep making all the Lord of the Rings stuff, Amazon can keep creating the Rings of Power and so on and so forth, is because they basically paid Tolkien's, J.R.R. Tolkien's family the rights to be able to create all the things, and then Tolkien's family basically gets probably, I'm sure, some type of profit or so there's some type of contractual deal per each thing that they make. So yeah, really good conversation because there's definitely I think sometimes it's worthwhile if you want to make an adaptation over something. You kind of have to do your research and see if it is worthwhile. Because sometimes when something was created 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years ago, if it worked at a certain point in time, and this is definitely a marketing strategy, if it worked with an audience or a readership, it will probably work again. Like that's the truth. And this is like a huge marketing thing. If it worked, it will work because it's already been proven. It just then becomes your goal of how do you
copy that?
Mm-hmm. This is the same reason we see Shakespeare stuff done time and time and time again because they work for modern audiences. But how old is Shakespeare stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a skill to adaptations, and it's definitely a bit of a process. So, but I know Hollywood loves to rely on the adaptation format. They absolutely do because it's a lower risk to invest in something that they know already will work. And W2C, this is actually something you see a lot with businesses. You said now something you will see as often at local events. You will find vendors selling products with copyright on them without the licensing. The risk is if they are found out, they will lose tons of money. So what a lot of vendors will do, this is a strategy, and I know this just from my research with business and merchandising. There's a product that comes out, and then there's 100 knockoffs. The knockoffs of the product are going to try to mass sell that product as fast as possible. They can make thousands of dollars because then once they receive the notification letter from the person of like take it down, then they have to stop selling it or go into a lawsuit. But in the time that they've sold the things until they receive the takedown letter, they've now made a X amount of profit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a thing that a lot of vendors do. Hence why you see vendors do that type of thing, because they're basically trying to fly under the radar for as long as possible.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was like, I don't know if there's what the right or wrong answer to that is, but that's just what people do. It's also the same reason that people will buy up the IP and will buy up the IP for products and creative things intentionally if they think it's good, so that way when somebody's looking for it, so they can resell it and make a profit. It's another thing that people will do. Oh man, what an exciting conversation about copyright and IP law, which I feel like I only know like very like surface level. So, by the way, if y'all are enjoying the stream, make sure to follow and subscribe. We're here every day with the Right Now community. Whether you guys are looking for like a daily writing community, you guys can see from the chat, super active. Like I said, 500 something, 40 something streams and counting. Whether you're looking for our weekly writers group, our book club, our critique streams, the podcast, the our other writing events like the writing competition, the writing conferences, and so on and so forth. We got it all. So make sure to tap that follow or subscribe button, and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, so I wanted to get that queued up. With that being said, let's hop into a writing sprint. So while I'm setting up the writing sprint stuff, you want to talk about like what you're working on today?
So I'm working on a fan fiction that I actually haven't published on AO3 yet. I couldn't get into Bound by Song the other day, so I just picked something random from my fanfiction folder, and obviously it's a One Piece fanfiction. It's working with Lunarians again, but instead of Silas, who was mute, this one is completely different. This one is actually set a little before him. And it's actually working with, for those who are familiar with One Piece, it starts at about the same time that Kaido and King, also known as Albert, escape from Punk Hazard. That's kind of the starting point, and so I'm kind of working with him right now, and still trying to figure out the exact direction I'm going with this one, but I know that that Daro, the main character, eventually becomes like a pirate, but actually haven't given this one too much thought. This one was more just kind of like a random fan fiction. I know I've got a couple others that I need to work on that people have been wanting me to finish, but this one is like, I've got ideas for this one, so I'm going to work on it for like a few days.
Sounds like you're having a fun time with it. Let's see.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I really love working with Zoans and Lunarians. It is really fun because there's not a lot of canon information, so I get to have fun kind of just making things up.
Woo! All right. And let's see. And as everyone knows, I am working on Scarecrow, none other. And I'm at a really intense chapter. So I'm at the chapter where they're all fighting each other in the first round of the Coliseum matches.
Ooh, sounds fun.
All right. And perfect. So I think I am all set up on my end. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hop into a writing sprint come join us. So we're going to write for a bit. We'll see what progress we can make. We've had some excellent conversations, but we got to try to push ourselves and try to make some progress as writers. So whether you are brainstorming, writing, editing, revising, author branding, proofreading, or maybe you're just procrastinating, come join us because it's time to write now. All right, and writing sprint done. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How did that writing sprint treat you? Were you able to make some progress that time? Hopefully, you got a few words in, a couple ideas, or maybe a whole new story you're embarking on. We would love to hear. Drop it down in the chat. What type of progress did you make? Were you able to make any words or anything at all? We'd love to hear. How about you, Sol? How did that sprint treat you?
God, I had most of a chapter not done that I managed to finish, and most of the next one.
So you were able to, sounds like you were able to make some solid progress that time.
More than solid, to be honest. I got further than I anticipated.
So what's your secret? You're always, whenever we do writing sprints, you're always pretty good about being consistent with getting some type of a workflow. How do you not get distracted?
Okay, don't say I don't get distracted, because I do. I really do.
But I mean, on average, you usually seem, when we come out of writing sprints, you almost always seem to have accomplished some type of a writing regardless.
Well, one, I'm working on something. So I'm usually working on something that I've been working on that day or the day before or the day before that. So something that, like, I didn't just pull out of thin air, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I knew where I was going with it. I knew what I wanted to do with it. So all I just had to do was just sit down and write it.
Okay.
And even then, like tonight, for instance, I actually just kind of sat here like, okay, you know what? I know kind of what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally just let my brain go wherever it wanted, and it actually turned out to be a pretty cool scene that
Mm-hmm.
is turning out kind of funny, actually.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're making that's awesome that you got some great work done. I'm actually really happy for you. I know with our chat, it looks like you're not the only one. WTC got through a chapter and a half of my edits. Nice, 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 my friend. Lynn got around 400 words ish, but I'm also still at work, so that distracted me. Well, I think if we're trying to get work done from work, a little bit more of a little bit more of an excuse. Absolutely. So I see Crow's coming to give you some inspiration.
Are you gonna be inspiration?
Man, you know, I was actually pretty productive. I was actually pretty productive that time myself. I didn't make too much progress in the overall chapter, but I'd kind of reviewed what I had started with originally. Um, yeah, it's interesting. So I have to do so much plotting. Not from a story, not from a plotting perspective, more from a character development perspective, because I've introduced so many different animals in this like this story arc. And I've really gone back and forth. And I'm sure, like, you know, since you do a lot of characters in your books, I'm really trying to figure out what is the right balance. Since really the story only tends to focus on about 2 to 4 main characters at a time until this specific story arc, where outside of our main characters, there's suddenly now 30 plus minor animals that I refer to. And each chapter at the beginning of the story arc, I probably, because I'm tracking everything, um, I'm tracking all of the animals. So I have a list of about 40 animals that I know for sure, with the intent of it feeling like it's about 100. But I think in each of the chapters, I generally reference about 5. In the first couple Coliseum chapters, I reference about 5 to 10. And then once we've got into the Coliseum and in the chapter leading up to it, I reference about 10 to 15 different animals. And some of them I'm referencing 2 or 3 times. Some of them I've only referenced once. And I'm tracking every single one I'm referencing, how many, who they are, and what I'm referencing them about. And I'm trying to find the right balance, because now as we're about to enter the fight, I had a very intentional, like, all right, all the animals are coming out. And some of them I've referenced a couple of times. Some of them I haven't referenced at all. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not sure what the right balance.
What I would do is, and this is what's helped me. This is what's helped me with having a lot of characters in one place. Is I would recommend reading the Warrior series,
Mhm.
especially during the Darkest Hour, the sixth book of the first arc. That had a battle that was between all 4 clans and Blood Clan, There was a lot of cats fighting. There was a lot of action. All of the major fights that happen throughout most of the major fights that happen throughout Warriors
Mm-hmm.
are not just two clans fighting, but usually
Mm-hmm.
3, 4, or even 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that could give you an idea of the right kind of balance of, okay, there's this one character over here, you want to mention just one line of what they're doing, and then you got
Mm-hmm.
this other character fighting this one person over here, you want to mention just briefly what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give glimpses, just like
Mm-hmm.
one, maybe two lines of what other characters are doing, but you want to try to keep, but depending on the point of view like you're writing from,
Mm-hmm.
it's so like your point of view is from Scarecrow, correct?
Exactly. So during any of the chapters where I'm introducing the animals, it's all Scarecrow's POV because
So
the
what
other
I would
characters
do is
aren't.
think about,
Mm-hmm.
just put yourself into Scarecrow's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, okay, so I'm Scarecrow, I'm standing right here, I'm gonna look in this direction. What do I see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, suddenly I'm turning because maybe I'm avoiding a blow. Well, suddenly
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking in a different direction. What am I seeing over here? You want to think about what direction he's looking in,
Mm-hmm.
and then think about who's in that direction and one line of what they're doing. Maybe two lines if it's two characters together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know that in the rough draft, I think what I did was I mapped out his path throughout the battle and then tried to take a glimpse of specific like individual fights throughout the course of the battle. So I think in the original rough draft, I think maybe about 10. I think about 10 individual fights that don't involve Scarecrow during the chapter. And then giving like some brief details and explanations about what he's seeing and whether they end up involving him or not involving him. But I mean, it's interesting because I'm not sure. It's one of those things that I'm like writing, but I don't know from a pacing wise or even from a reader perspective how it's going to feel until it's done. And then I'm gonna have to get feedback because there's so many animals. And the goal isn't I want the reader to remember all the animals. That's not the goal. The goal is I've introduced a lot of minor animals, but the reader also knows all the characters are basically going into a coliseum to fight each other to the death. So like the goal isn't for them to remember. The goal is for them to maybe get attachments like, oh, that's interesting. And then during the fight, be like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that animal.
So yeah, then what I would do is just have one, two lines. If it's not involving him directly, no more than two lines.
Yeah.
If it involves him indirectly,
Mm-hmm.
maybe three, possibly four, depending on exactly how indirectly they're involved. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously, if they involve him directly, then you're going to want more.
Yeah. Okay. I that sounds good. I think that's the direction that I had taken it. But I also try to use the animals fighting, the individual fightings as adding to the pacing. I use them as intentional tone setting for the chapter and pacing. So sometimes I use it as a tone setting for because I want it to feel a certain way, but then I also use it as a pacing. If it's a one line thing, I kind of use it as a transition sometimes of like, and like I use it as a transition of Scarecrow's running, a fight happens, and then I use that as a pacing to get him to the next fight. It's really interesting. I think I've done a really interesting mix of different things. And I tried to do that. I wanted it to feel like it's something the reader hasn't experienced before. I want it to feel like it's a fight they haven't experienced before. Um, Whether or not I'll be successful, I guess I'll find out.
If you
But I'm
like, I
definitely
can
trying to
actually
remember.
send you a
Mhm,
snippet from the original Pirates book,
mhm,
from the first one, where Kasai is actually in a fight where there's multiple things going on.
mhm,
It's not like 50 characters, but it's definitely more than 5, and
mhm.
maybe that could give you a bit of an idea too.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to check that out. Absolutely. Yeah, any references like that because I know you're always good with putting working on multiple characters, especially action sequences. You
It's
definitely have a hand for them.
it's tricky doing that, and honestly I attribute it all to watching One Piece just way too much. is like right
And that's
now.
the thing. I don't know how it's come. Maybe it's come out very well, or maybe it hasn't. The truth is, I just don't know, and I probably won't know until I get the feedback. But I
Yeah,
know I'm
it's
definitely
hard
making
to
a big
tell.
swing.
It's hard to tell with your own work.
I'm making a really big swing. This is probably, of the stuff that I've done in Scarecrow up to this point in the book, this is probably the most difficult writing, the most difficult technical writing scene that I'm attempting.
That
And I'm
makes
intentional.
sense.
I'm intentional about it. Like I know how difficult it is, but it's because I'm trying to weave so many characters who have so varying different of relevancies. I'm really trying to get the pacing. I'm very like intentional with the pacing sentence per sentence. I'm really trying to change the tone sentence by sentence. Like it's a very difficult thing that I'm trying to do, and I'll see if I'm able to pull it off or not. So any references you can send will be much appreciated.
Yeah, no, definitely. And
I
I'll
just I
try
want
and
to
I'll
feel
try to get.
I want to feel like I'm rewarding the reader. I think that's the thing I care about. I want to feel
Yeah,
like I'm
no, I get
rewarding the
that.
reader because I've really led up on this part of the story arc. I've really led up for many, many chapters. And I want it to feel like they're being rewarded with something really freaking cool that they've never read before.
Yeah, basically, it's a building storm where you have a slight calm to it, and then you have, the very last piece of it. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I totally get that.
Mhm.
Warriors did the same thing with all of like the major battles, the battle with the Dark Forest, the battle against Blood Clan, where there
Mhm.
was a bunch of different characters fighting all at once.
Mhm.
We knew it was going to happen. We were led up to that. We knew what was going on, and then it happened, and it's like, oh my god. Yeah, no, I'll try to get some references for you, both from Pirates and then from. I'll see if I can actually screenshot some of the scenes from Warriors for you,
Mhm.
because I've got a fair amount of them on my Google Library.
Mhm.
Just to give you an idea, because with my own scenes, you can see how it works from a human's point of view, and then
Mhm.
Warriors is all cats, so you can get an idea of, even though it's just cats, an
Mhm.
animal's point of view.
Awesome. All right, my friends. Well, I think we had an excellent writers group meeting today. We had some absolutely great conversations, and then it sounds like we were all pretty productive during that writing sprint. But that brings us to the end of today's writers group. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back next Wednesday with our next meeting of the Right Now Writers Group. Remember, we meet every single Wednesday, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Pacific, 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to come join us on stream, just drop a comment. Let us know if you want to come chat with the other writers, and we'll try to get some writing in. I'll be back tomorrow with another daily writing stream at, good question, I don't have it on me. I think it's 3 p.m. Pacific. So I'll be back tomorrow. More writing, more fun, and trying to more productivity. So yeah, that's right. And then we go into the 4th of July weekend, and all my streams this weekend are TBD. So I can take a break this weekend. But that's all that I got for you today, my friends. I'm Kaufman, and this is
Chat Soul, and you
and
can't
we'll
see him but Crow.
and Crow. And we'll catch you on the next stream. Take care, friends. Stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. It's time to write
Right now.
Sorry.
Right now, not right now, but right now. Read now, right now.